very brief, Robbie. Thank you very much. I want to for coming out to the SharePoint Saturday event. It's good evening, good afternoon, and good night. Technically, I'm sure for almost everybody on this call. As Robbie indicated, Fabian Williams. I am a SharePoint architect at Planet Technologies. Session is going to be why our custom workflows activity is important and how to use them. So the session objectives and takeaway, I always start off with this so that you have an understanding of what our topic presentation is going to be and what at the end should have achieved. Just to gauge your time. So the first thing we're going to do is to understand how to use Visual Studio to create a custom workflow activity. Hold on, let me jump back and forth. Okay, all right. Jump back into this again. I'm sorry. Okay. Understand how to use Visual Studio to create custom workflow activities. Understand how to consume these custom workflow activities in SharePoint. Understand how to use a custom workflow activity in a list or a library. And the key takeaway is going to be in environment. I'm just up here, but the key takeaway, I'm just going to paraphrase it rather than while you look at this, is you may find yourself in several situations, depending on your role inside, where you're interfacing with clients, they have a problem, and one of the things you may face is that you deploy custom code. In the States, where I live, and in the practice at Planet, where part of the federal practice, federal government usually have mandates say no custom code, no custom code, no custom code, and accordingly, whereas things would to be done in a farm solution, this kind of ties your hand. So by using custom workflow activities, especially workflows, this gives you the added benefit of doing something that can be consumed in SharePoint Designer, that you can actually leave for the end user to be able to take and and use for a long period of time. So as I mentioned before, Fabian Williams, SharePoint architect with Planet Technologies in the Federal Information Access. I'm a SharePoint community activist, international speaker, but due to these online events, because I have not set foot and done an in-person international talk as yet. We do have SharePoint Saturday in Nairobi coming up, and my very good Jim Bob Howard is actually trying to get me there. So we're all rooting for that. I'm a part of a committee member of SharePoint user group, and the SharePoint Saturday speakers. We're here, SharePoint conference. And you'll find me on Twitter at just straight Fabian Williams. And you also have me on my blog, SharePointFabian.com/blog. The only other thing that I usually, you already experienced, I do speak very fast. Typically, I'm looking in front of an audience, gauge the eye contact and see when I'm really speaking too fast and people's eyes start to glaze over. But start to speak fast, unmute your microphone, stay slow down, because as I mentioned before, while I'm on full screen, I can't see the text going back and forth. The one thing with, and this is the bragging rights right here, is that it is Olympic season. These three Jamaicans you see here are going to three-peat. They're going to be the trifecta. We are going to win the 100-meter. Usain Bolt is going to set another world record. This is just me telling you this, and you're looking into my crystal ball. For left-hand corner is my daughter Dominique, who last week Saturday at SharePoint Saturday in New York was my co-producer. So, at 1 o'clock in the morning here, she's asleep. Otherwise, she represented with me as well. So this is our agenda. It's going to be we're going to talk about a business case that we're going to take out the entire conversation of this session. We're going to talk about it so we can understand from why we're doing this and what we should expect to see in the end. Because workflow activities are part of the sandbox solution, I'm going to speak to what the sandbox solution is. That's why it says in the context of only workflows. We can certainly get into it from in its entire, but I want to limit that conversation just to workflows so you can understand where we're coming from there. I am going to how to create your custom workflow activity in Visual Studio 2010, how to consume your workflow, your custom workflow activity in SharePoint Designer, and also how to use it inside your list and library, and then we'll have a summary just to wrap it up, and I'll entertain any questions and answers. This is not a 300-400 session, so we're not going to be diving into code. However, there will be usually I would poll the audience in terms of finding out how many people are admin devs, how many people are business users and stuff. But what we will do here is we will do what's a code review, if you will. The code is already there. I will walk through it and talk about what this presentation I'm doing. I've already blogged, so you can actually, if you want to take it, a takeaway, you can blog site. It is actually there that you can take a look at. Okay. Well, let's discuss the business case first of all. What problem are you trying to solve? So, as I mentioned before, for varying reasons, you may actually be engaged in a client where you use a farm solution. They do not want you putting solutions in a farm where they put in files in the file system. So certain solutions are going to be just going to be taken off. All right. You need to implement complex logic. Now, complex logic, that is a relative statement because complexity is in the eye of the beholder. Either complex because it's tedious, it could be complex because it's very hard but very short. The example that we're going to do here today is actually going to be solving the recursive loop problem. Now, guys, you remember, back in the MOS days before we had sandbox solutions, to do recursive loops in terms of a workflow, the easiest way, or the I knew how to do it, was to actually create another list, put a counter in that list, and basically increment or decrement the counters as I'm affecting another item. So basically look in the list, figure out there, write that to the other list, and then start to go back and forth and decrement that counter. But that was problematic. For one thing, if it didn't happen in the speed that it needs to happen in, workflow start to get queued up because, of course, it runs on a timer job, then that could fail. So it was not some atomic or something that could be consistent. You may run it 2 different times and get 2 different in terms of just where if it does it finish all the way or does it stop and abends. So the complexity is either complexity in logic or just complexity in task, the amount of volume that you have to do. You may need to automate. You may have a need to automate ways to manage granular level at the item level. And by that I mean that, and I've actually had this as a client before, and I have examples here that I'm going to discuss with you. Is you may have a situation where, in my case, there were several people going to the same document or document library. It doesn't really matter, and they wanted to make sure that everyone could document library. However, once the item was in the document library, only the author of those could actually go back and touch those items. They also wanted to have a workflow that says that from person A to person B, even if you were the author of the item, once it's left you and gone to somebody, your role should change to reader, whereas the other person says to contributor. So, item level permissioning in an automated scale is another way where, these things are not easily the box because, you'd have to be doing it manually. However, you can certainly use break role inherit a sandbox solution to get around that as well. Now, the one thing that is extremely, at least for me, is because if you've been following most of my blogs or most of my sessions lately, almost what I'm talking about now is dealing with Office 365 SharePoint Online, mixing in some level inside there. So if you are working in the Office 365 SharePoint Online space, then you know that you cannot touch the farm. So I won't say cannot. There are certain things do in SharePoint Online in the administrative console, but all of that is through the browser. Go and say, okay, I'm going to go to central administration, open up the service application, and do this. You can't do that. So through PowerShell, you're able to do a little bit now, but in order to get the things that you need to do to have a fully functioning environment where you can manage entire experience, you basically are limited to you doing sandbox solutions, client-side object. All right. So these are some of the things that you're trying to solve. Now, as every ailment, you guys have seen commercials on, ask your doctor about if custom workflow activity is right. So that's what we're going to be doing here today to find out, is this a good solution for you? So briefly talking about sandbox solutions, specifically in the context of working with workflows. So One of the key things about sandbox solution, as an IT pro, as a dev, that will appreciate is that everything is scoped at the site collection level. So to the IT pro, the reason why this is because you don't want to be that admin that is going to get that call, at 1 a.m. saying, hey, the farm's down, you got to go fix it. And the reason why the farm is down is because of some errand solution that a developer created that's just gone haywire. If you're the developer, the way that you'd enjoy a solution like this is because you don't have to. If you don't have permissions on the farm that you're on at a farm level, you can write solutions can be placed at a site collection level, and as long as you have the requisite access inside the site collection, you are to deploy your solutions without any assistance from the IT pro. So both the IT pro can actually see benefits in this. The IT pro gets a little bit more, in my opinion, because he can all rules and monitors and thresholds and these solutions, such that if to take too many resources, he can say can knock them off. It does not require an admin to install or deploy, so you can basically just go up there through a GUI and solution on there. It is Office 365 SharePoint Online safe. What do I mean by that? I mentioned before, if you're running in this SPO environment, you can basically drop your solutions on there with no fuss. It's there, it's working, and you can go to town. And as I mentioned, Resource Monitor can be applied to prevent rogue operations. And here's something where again there's more value, because as people who work in we all do, one of the key things that we're trying to do all the time is to empower our users to do more rather than coming back to us with either mundane tasks or tedious tasks. So, we're here to solve the problem, empower you to do more with less, right? So by us creating sandbox solution and in this case custom workflow activities, we can take things that are complex logic, things either business process reengineering or things that they have as a line of business application, wrap that in a custom workflow activity and say, here, inside SharePoint Designer, pull this as an activity and all done for you. So, this again allows a person with no code experience or no professional code experience to take a goblet of work and use it as an side a workflow wizard. And it's portable and easy to deploy. You just package it as a WSP, give it to somebody, or that WSP is going to be uploaded in Sandbox Solution Gallery, and you can, as I say, you can go to town. So there's a good story to tell here. Solution as it relates to custom workflow activities. So first thing that you need to know when we're talking about custom workflow activities inside Visual Studio 2010 is that it's relatively, I think it's simple. Not complex at all. So to begin, you start empty SharePoint solution, and when you're doing that, you certainly need to structure that project inside Visual Studio and create your workhorse method. So the first couple of things that you're going to need to do, as I mentioned, is open up Visual Studio and click on 2010. Open up here. Let me just drop this right here so you can actually see. Open up the SharePoint install template. Click on 2010. Make sure your assembly set to 3.5. Click on empty SharePoint project. Name it appropriately, and then town. Make sure it is deployed as you're going through this provisioning part of it as a sandbox solution. Be the default, and the next thing you need to do is to create a public class that will do the bulk of the work. It's not just class name, class name. It needs to be a class because it needs to be accessible via the SharePoint Designer. So that you have to put the public monitor for that to work. The next thing is to create a method that will take first parameter, the SP user code workflow context, so that it can communicate back and SharePoint Designer, and it will return an object that's going to be of type hashtag. So this is basically the stub of what my method looks like inside that class that I'm going to be creating. So the name, as you can see, public class keep status the same, and the cache table of the class. So what are we going to do? I should have prefaced this entire conversation in terms of what we're going to be doing. I'll save it for the code. I've already gone past it, so I won't muddy the water by back into it. Once we touch the code, I'll explain what we're trying to do then. So the next on that, then the next thing that you need to do is to create an element of file, that's done by creating an empty module inside the project. And when you create this element inside your project, you automatically get a feature. That feature is going to be scoped, I believe, going to be at the farm level. And the first thing you need to the web level, or the site collection level, I should say. No, that's not true. The farm level, and you need to go back in there and change it collection level, because again, this is a sandbox solution. If you don't change it, when you try to compile it, it's going to say, hey, you have something in there that violates the sandbox rules. So you got to go in there and change the scope to site to make collection. The next thing that you need to do is to create some workflow actions. In fact, let me just so we can take a look at it as I'm talking. You to build out this elements of XML, there's going to be a few elements inside there, workflow actions and rule designer. Now, in looking at this file, you can see there are a couple of things that that I've pointed out there, just to as a takeaway for you when you get the slide. That's going to be of importance. And there's a couple of different ways that you can certainly do this item right here. So obviously, you've got to give it a proper name, set sandbox function to true, provided the assembly name, referencing your class file that you created, give it a proper function name, and a category. Why this is important is because when you actually go inside SharePoint Designer and you're for this activity that's going to be there, the information that you provide in this element of XML is where that information is and how it looks to the user and how they will interact with it. The rule design, as you can see, there's a sentence. That is what you'll see once you've actually selected the activity, and that will determine whether or not you can either input parameters. Let's say that you're doing something like the role-based does the break role inheritance, because break role inheritance, as if you go to MSDN and take a look at it, it does take a that actually says, should I copy the list permissions of everybody that's there now, role inheritance, or should I not copy it? By not copying it, then basically nobody has any access to it until you put it in there. Copying it, it breaks the role inheritance, but then it gives specific permissions to the people that it's copied, inherited before, and put it inside there. So, that's just one example of how this inner sentence could actually take an input parameter. This one doesn't, obviously, but everyone does have an output parameter, and that output parameter, in its simplest form, can just be dictating whether or not this is a success or if it's a failure in terms of the method. So you can basically provide error handling. Okay. You'll notice with the first arrow here, it points to the, as I mentioned before, which is the workflow context, and the other parameter is just the parameter what I'm using just for exceptions. Okay. So how do you consume it? So once you've done that and it's built, and as I mentioned before, we are inside SharePoint Designer. So when you're in SharePoint Designer and you open up it, obviously the solution is already there. We're making that assumption, which means if the solution is a sandbox solution inside the gallery and it's activated, then when you open up your SharePoint Designer site and it reads from that site, it'll find all the solutions that are going to be there. When you click on Workflow and you begin to start to go through your workflow activities, the Actions tab, the category that you specified, the name that you give it, you'll start these items showing up. And as you start to use these items, remember my designer sentence? My designer sentence comes up now and it actually performs that. So as you can see, three-step line of a workflow, and two of the log items so I can know if it works or not. So log item to say it's going to start, do the and the next thing that we're going to do now is actually do a demo walkthrough of what this is. All right, so let me take a look here and see if there's a BRB. Okay, all right, nothing else. So let's move into this. And by the way, if you do have questions, just stop me. Don't wait till the end, or put something inside the window, and hopefully somebody will unmute and say that there's a question waiting for me. So, let's keep this interactive if we can. So the next thing is let's open up Visual Studio and start there. So let's open WFE here. Going to be snapping on my end, but it may be slower on your end. Let me see if I made this here. You can see what's going on too. Yep. Okay, so right here what we have is project, similar to, well, not similar, exactly what I saw inside of my slide. And let's start off with just the so the project, as you can see, sandbox solution is set to true. This is the site that it's going to. And the first thing, as I mentioned before, that you wanted to do is create a class. The class that's being created is this guy right here called status the same. And as I mentioned, I was going to talk about what it does. So I think I alluded to the fact that this is also blog. So I'm going to have to pin here a little bit. I think it's actually my last blog that I did way back in April. But what we're trying to do is solve the recursive loop problem in SharePoint Designer sandbox solution. So everyone knows my blog address, so you can actually go to that separately. What we're doing here in this example is that let's assume that you are doing a human resources department, and as this human resources department is taking on apps for prospective employees. What's an easy way to generate the XML file? Oh, there is no easy way, buddy. You will hand type this yourself, unless you have. You can actually create your own templates inside Visual Studio and then call it and use it. But however, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, anybody other than me. I think in Visual Studio 2012, there's a lot more available to you in terms of stuff. These files like elements of XML, creating list definitions and stuff like that. I play with it that much, but I believe it was there the last time I looked, but I can't quite remember. For me, I do it all by hand. Call me old-fashioned. But you're right. XML files obviously is case sensitive. You make something, and trust me, I spend a lot of time debugging where it's not even a problem in syntax. It's a case sensitivity that messes. So yeah. All right. So so the next thing I'm going to mention is to get back into this. So the first thing is your HR company. You're taking on application. The premise here is that as an applicant comes in, we want to capture that applicant's information. And as once they're accepted into the system, we want to set up interviews with hiring manager. Well, first of all, the technical recruiter, so they can get a text screen. The hiring manager, and then possibly somebody else, or maybe a panel. So the person comes inside, and then there's going to be 5. You're going to have a workflow that's 5 task activities for these 5 people that they have to go and see as part of the interview process. But what we want to have happen, so obviously one list has the application. In a task list, based on that workflow, you may have several tasks that's waiting to happen. The idea for this, that the problem that you're trying to solve, is that you want to be able to, inside the interview process, you want to say that if somebody says, okay, this guy is just not going to work for us, you want everything for that person that's already been scheduled to be canceled or to move through. Now, conversely, let's say that this guy is just a rock star and you're tracking through. So you want to say after he passes the first interview and say approve, just approve the way through. So basically, you're not wasting people's time in terms of going through the process if the person needs to be kicked out. Be accepted in. So the idea here is, if we're looking at this, in this is that we have. Let's walk through the code. This is our public class that we have here. This is our method. It's rich table. It's called Cascade Assessment Status. Basically, I want to cascade the status of this person as they're going through. So if it happens in one, take it, cascade it all the way through. So my method is called CAD. Takes in only one parameter, which is that SP user workflow text, and turn in a hash table. So I'm just setting up some strings right here, and I'm using my try-catch block, as all good developers do. using a using statement so I don't have to dispose any methods. This is all good coding practices. And opening up my list. So my assessment list, which is going to be the list that the person, I'm calling it right here, and I'm getting the list ID. And I'm also looking at my condition, and and that conditions is called A conditions. So list A and list B basically. Then the next thing I'm going to do is find the current item. Question? Oh, I thought I heard someone. Find the current item that I'm dealing with, and then go inside the corresponding list to find the match for it. And once I find the match for it, then I'm going to go do a the recursive loop that I was talking about. That whereas before we could not do for each loops inside of the previous versions of SharePoint Designer. Loops were taken, was there at one point in time, was taken out because they didn't want endless loops and for people to basically break their system. So once it goes through all of that, then obviously we have a catch method and a result method, and this is basically the workhorse of the entire system. Now I want to come up a couple of things. So notice the namespace, Cascade assessment status. Notice the class. Keep same status, and the method cas. Over here in my elements.xml.
Hey, Fabian. Hey,
Sharon is gone?
Fabian?
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
Zoom up here. It looks. Okay, good.
Let me fix that. I don't know what happened there. Let me come back here and do share desktop. Let me wait until it comes back up. Can everyone see it now? Are we back up?
It's loading still.
All right, I see it.
You're up.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, guys. All right, so by looking at the one. All right, so let's walk through this element. So in my workflow actions, we have status assessment of, and if you recall, and let's go back to SharePoint Design. Under actions, we have status assessment updates, Fabian custom actions. So this is my category. This is my method. So is it gone again? Is it gone again? Guys?
No, you're still there.
Okay, I just saw. Okay, all right. Okay, so here's the name, status assessment update 2. Sandbox equals true. Assembly, class name, which is my basic namespace and my project and my namespace. My function name, which is cat, applies to all, so it can be used everywhere, and it's going to be in the category of Fabian's custom action. So you click activity, you'll have a rule designer for statuses based on remains the same, and of course I'm spelling error here because I was rushing before, and an output of taken in a variable, which is going to be basically my hashtag, the hash table that's being returned, either success or failure, and it's going to basically give me that information if and I can determine how to handle it. The first parameter it takes in as an input parameter, the direction in, direction out is that workflow context object, and the one out is basically my results. So relatively simple. The only way that this gets a little complex is if you wanted to add additional parameters as input parameters, parameters as output parameters. It doesn't get any more complex than that. It's just a matter of just adding additional, incrementing your ID by 1 and so on and so forth. In fact, I'm going to take this opportunity to show you another project. Stand by 1 second where I'm actually at. So let me just jump to this other project where we're role inheritance. Take a look. As you can see, let's walk through this one as well. This one basically is before almost the same thing again, except this guy here is taken in 2 parameters. So the Boolean for copy role assignments, as I mentioned before, if you're using break-in role inheritance, you have an additional parameter to tell it whether or not to copy the existing roles or not copy it. So take the additional parameter, but the same thing is passing an output parameter again in terms of success and failure. But the elements of XML file, you'll notice now it actually has input parameters. So you have the copy role assignments as well as the outputs. in the parameter section, there's also an additional fields there. So the only is just the amount of parameters that you're using. Otherwise, it's the exact same field. In fact, you can copy and paste. Make sure you change the IDs and change the names and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, once you've done that, you build your solution, and once you've built your solution, then what you will have is a resulting SP file. So under Documents, Studio, Projects, Planet, working on the Cascade one, under Bin directory, bug, you have your WSP file. So you basically copy and paste this WSP file. If you're not on, well, if you're running in Office 365, you're going to have to do that anyway. You have to get this WSP there somewhere. If you're working on an on-prem system, you can basically and it'll be deployed directly to the solutions gallery. So it just depends on the environment that you're in, whether you're on inside the cloud. But assuming that you're in the cloud, let's just see what that experience is like. So I'm actually going to open up my Office 365 here. I think I already have the solution there, so I'm going to go ahead out and put it back in. So I'm going to go to Site Settings and go to the top level, show you how this operates. So this guy here, let's deactivate this guy, and we're going to put him back in. Delete. All right. So now that he's deleted, something interesting. So notice let's go ahead and grab this URL. So I'm going to do a Control-C. And if this is open, I'm going to kill this guy here and come back into SharePoint Designer. We're going to look at SharePoint Designer before anything is. So let's go to Open Sites, Paste, Open. So let's open this guy up, which is in Office 365, and open the workflows and see if we see that solution, which we shouldn't see, and then we're going to upload it and take a look again. All right. While this is spinning up, are there any questions? Are we good to go? Guys are a quiet bunch. Requesting control. Well, that's not going to happen, so I'm going to decline. I'm sure that's probably an accident, right? You're not trying to take over, not trying to hijack my session, are you? Yeah. Well, this is taking forever, isn't it? Not responding. Nothing like live demos to keep the hair on the back of your neck standing up. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right. All right. On the workflows, I'm going to say let's do a list workflow just for giggle's sake. I have nothing there, do I? Let me go back to let's go back to SharePoint Saturday India. List in there I can use. So let's go to flows, go to flow, SharePoint India document lab. Let's call this test alpha. F workflow. So we're going to do actions right here, and you notice core actions, documents actions, list actions. Basically, you can see that this is just a standard out of the box, right? Everyone can do that, right? So let's go ahead now and drop this out. I'm not going to save this, and minimize this right here. Minimize this. Okay, no, this is where we want to be. Let's go ahead now and say solution, site actions, sites, solutions. So when you're working with sandbox solutions, regardless if it's something for custom workflow activity or not, this is where you're going to be playing. You click on the Solutions tab, do Upload Solution, find your as you can see, this is WSP that we have here. Well, that's pretty cool. Inheritance. Do I want to do that one? No. Let's get the other one. I need to go between my V and my desktop, so forgive me a little bit. I want this guy. So C, copy, go to my host under SPSIndia, right click and paste. All right, so I'm gonna my host now. go back to my host here, and oh, there it is. All right, Cascade, and there's my file. I click here. Immediately, I can activate this guy. So I'm just going to activate him in one step, and he's activated. He's inside my solution. So if I come here now and go back to Designer, and let me just get completely out. Open up back SharePoint Designer, Designer, DESIG, and go back to my SPSIndia site, and click on workflows. Do another list workflow. Give it a name. Let's call this WF Bravo, and click OK. And I go to Act. You'll notice now you can see this, right? So we have Fabian custom actions and status. I click on this right here. It brings that guy in because remember it took no parameters. It's the list name that you're trying to affect, as 2 parameters if you want. I could have gone with this, but this was just to give you an example of it, not something for production. So as you can see, that's what you would have there. So let's actually watch this work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to 2 lists that I have here, and the story as I before is that we have first of all a bunch of candidates that we, all right. So I'm going to F5 this here. So we can see we have this is the workflow that we're using. The workflow is already deployed. These are the candidates that are here right now. So let me just take a look at Sheets a little bit and see. Okay, we have A and hop, right? So let's go here and say that candidate A, I want to be able to this guy here and say that what everything is let's say that he's approved. We know who this guy is. He's a rock star. He's a MCM, MVP, really brilliant dude. We do not need to put him all of that stuff. So let's just approve him right off the bat. So once we've done that, I'm going to come here. Now notice before, both of these is set to canceled, right? So the recursive loop that's going to happen is by me coming here and saying, okay, hit the workflow off, click update assessments, start my workflow. Now, by the way, this could be something that on automatic, on either on updates or on create new item. So this is done. Let's take a look at the status of this right here. 12:37 a.m. Is that right? 8:4. Timing could be off. Oh no, this is my FP web server, so it's in St. Louis, so the time is right. So I'm going to come here. It's approved there. I'm just going to F5 here. And as you can see, both HA, higher A is already set to approve right here. Just to make sure that so let's come over to here and let's go back up and let's manipulate candidate B as well. Change him from edit item. Let's cancel to something else. Let's say that we want to put this guy here as work in progress. And let's go ahead and run on this cat. All right, completed. Let's come over here. He was before press F5, and now we have him all the WIP. So have here, and the one thing that's actually making this link is this ID field right here and assessment. So that's the relationship that we have between the 2 lists. But as I mentioned before, this is the problem that this is just one example of a problem that you're trying to solve in terms of doing a recursive. And as you can see, this had nothing to do with creating any counters, had nothing to do with and decrementing things or using an additional list. This is just simple code. Lines of code inside there. It's relatively simple. It's what? Let's find that guy again. Hold on. I think it's this guy behind here. No. Project. Cascade. Right. This is probably the simplest one of the bunch. A couple different lines of code here. The is extremely simple. This is probably something that you do even on your own farm solutions and stuff like that. But this can be implemented as a sandbox solution, can be used for all. The key thing here is that you could be building out these solutions. In fact, let's say that you know the thing that you'd like to do, like find the manager field of a person, something that's not easily discerned. The box activities. You can build like an arsenal of these in a library and just have them there for your just sitting there collecting dust. Or guess what? Put them in the App Store, right? There's just WSP in the App Store, make some money off it, and have these things out there that are people meet every day, and you have an easy solution for it. So in the end, what time is it? It is 1:41, so I'm at 20 more minutes to go before I'm done. But what else can I talk about on this? Because I think that's basically the. Come back to my my deck. Is it actually? So do you have any questions for me? Do you want to see something else along these lines, or do you have any questions for me right now? I didn't think I was going to get it, but I thought you guys were going to be interactive and ask questions. Anyone? Kim's typing a message. Is anything I've missed or anything? One of the things I can talk about while Kim is typing. I can't find it right now, and I should have actually done some homework on this. But there's a list of types that you can find out there that are specific to custom workflow activities. System of Boolean. It's not just all that are available to you in .NET. There's a subset of them that you can use inside the custom workflow activity. There's a good image on there. I think what I'll do is I'll tweet it with a hashtag SPSIndia later on once I find it so that you can that. But I needed that for something that I was doing and I couldn't recall it, so I'll send that to you guys. You use a custom workflow action in Designer versus a custom workflow forms studio. Custom workflow form from scratch. Workflow action in Designer. Let me see if I can answer that question. When would you use a custom workflow action in versus a custom workflow? Oh, from scratch. Okay. So again, if you're doing a custom flow, you're doing basically a workflow in Visual Studio rather than using something. The key thing is that if you're doing a workflow, then you're basically you can't do these workflows inside a sandbox solution, so it will have to be implemented as a farm solution. Because with workflows that are done in Visual Studio, the tab need to use email to basically send the activities to the users. You can't do that in sandbox solution because you can't have access to those farm resources. So that's the first thing right there. If the fact that touch the farm is prohibiting you, then you cannot do a custom workflow from scratch in Visual Studio. A custom workflow activity in Designer so that you use some of the farm features that are available in SharePoint Designer that you don't have in your custom workflow. So that's one. The other one is again, and although I'm a developer and I do developer disease, which means that you give me a problem to solve, I'm going to find out how I want to code it. No, so to fight a disease, the first thing I try to do is, okay, can this be done out of the box? Can be done out of the box. B, how much out of the box can be done, and how much do I have to to do behind the scenes? And in doing behind the scenes is now, do I do it as a sandbox solution or do I need to code? And then you ask the question, the client, how much of this are you willing to live without? Because be a farm solution in the end. So once I've gone through those due diligences to find out whether or not it can be done out of the box or does it need to be what it needs to be done code, then that will also aid me in my decision making process to figure out, do I need can I get away with a sandbox solution, or can I do this inside just regular SharePoint Designer? So I think those are going to be best answers I have for you, Kim, but a great question. I meet it all the time. This is things that I do every day in fighting back the disease of always wanting to code. Thank you for that question. Else? Nobody? So you guys are all experts now in custom workflow activities. I can assume that, right? All right. Time that I get into a problem, I'm going to call you guys and say, hey, I'm stuck. I need your help. Reference the session that I did before. Come on, seriously, you guys. A question. No one. I hear crickets. You guys realize it's almost, what's it? Almost 2 o'clock my time. I'm running on red. That high is going to get kicked off because no one's asking any question. I'm going to fall asleep behind the mic. No questions. I can't beg a question. Guys, huh? All right. Well, I don't think there's anything else I can tell you. Ravi, are you there?
Yes, Fabian, I'm here.
Do you have questions? Actually, Matt, where can you find all the attributes for the XML file? Yeah, that's that link. Yeah. That's Matt. I've used it before, but I don't know where it is now, and I'll find it for you, and I'll tweet. Ravi, you're gonna say something?
I was just saying, I wish I could ask you some questions, but unfortunately, I'm not a SharePoint developer. I'm an infrastructure guy, so.
All right. Okay. Well, most interesting custom workflow action I've done. The break role inheritance one is the one that's most interesting. Even though it's the simplest, it's the most interesting one because you use the word interesting. The reason why is because I was doing it on a document set first of all, and documents it's from the folder, and the way you actually break role inheritance on a folder, copy items from folders is different than in a list because you have to do it binary. So I actually had to do things to make that one work properly, and also I was doing it on a library that had thousands of items, and obviously the thing to remember there is if you break role inheritance in a library, when this library is loaded end user, it has to check every item in there to see does this person have permission to see this? Does this to see that? So it's iterating through all of that. So there were some performance concerns that I had. That I had to mitigate, and also in working with document sets that inherit from folders, I had to mitigate that. But that's probably the most interesting. It was the simplest to do, but the most interesting one because I had several challenges that I had to overcome. Funny, I've been there before, just for something. Okay, just for something else. Yeah, it's something that I'm sure if you guys work with people and they always want. They want this granular access of permission on an item level, then you are going to meet that. And as I mentioned before, this solution that I did for break role inheritance, the simplicity in the code is what made this solution actually easier to implement. Imagine if I had to do something like that, in another way. It could have been, either performance nightmare, taken a lot more, out of me. Questions? We got 14 minutes. What is the one thing you wish I told you about customer? So actually, Chris Beckett. Good question. In fact, I'll just show you these. So, Victor Willen, very smart guy, MCM, MC, MVP, actually has a good article on that. And I think in my blog I referenced person is got to be Chris Beckett. So he goes by the name SharePoint Bits. He goes by SharePoint Bits, and he has a good it as well. I just can't find it now, but just look up SharePoint Bits. This is him right here. Looks like he lives in the Seattle area. He has some good information. Before I did my projects, actually, called up. The good thing about the community, I'll use this moment to get on a. Before I did this project, because I know Chris Beckett, I actually called him up and say, hey, I'm doing this. You did this stuff. Talk to me about it. And he gave me the resources. In fact, the link that I'm telling you about, he was the one to that link. And then the rest is just practicing. So I read the blogs because the one thing I'll tell you is that a lot of examples of these things out there because either people have there's not enough work to warrant doing it for your specific instance because doing something custom, then obviously it's going to be unique to that client. It's not something that you can say, this is going to be the same for this person as it for that person. It's custom for a reason because that client needs it. So you something from what somebody has already done and make it work for you. So I had to do a lot of reading in people's blog and then myself and then ping the community like Jimmy Howard said, the community rocks, and say, hey, jump on this link, walk me through this stuff. There's people on this call right now that I've actually done. I'm stuck. Jump on this call with me and show me how to do X, Y, and Z. And people have done the same thing with me. Hey, can you help me? So I've got, I think the question, in terms of what I've learned before, engage people who know this topic, ask for help. Some of the documentation is either going to be or just outright wrong, and only through people that have experience actually get the better answers and and shorten that learning curve. When will you buy me a beer? What? I don't even understand that, man.
Ravi had a good question, Fabian. He was
Since no one's
asking 20.
Yes, so Ravi, the answer to that question, I think JB may actually be able to question better than I can, and the reason why I'll say this is because, and again, this is now for me to pimp my book, is I'm on my last chapter in my book, and I have not blogged since she has said you better be writing the books rather than writing your blog. So I have not seen SharePoint 23. I'm on holidays for the next, what's it now, 12 days, and I have my ISO installed it, and I'll be checking it out. I really don't know the answer to that. There's a couple of things I've heard, but because I've not done it, the one main lesson I've learned, other than to go to the community, the one main is that I guess it's again preaching this philosophy that you can do out of the box that you should approach first, and before you jump to a studio, see if it's something you can do in a custom workflow activity, because that's something you can leave behind for other people who don't know how to code to be able to use. Because you saw how easy it is to use. You basically open up SharePoint, go to your action, and it's there. So if you had a library here that basically, A, B, C, D, E, because the customer always does that, then you're good. There's a good maintainability there, because the customer or the client is going to be able to these click-through processes with no code to get the job done, rather than calling you something custom. So I think it allowed me, it taught me to create things that are reusable, extensible, and maintainable. That's the answer to the question. Hopefully that. All right, with 9 minutes left, I don't think there's, and I think I've taught myself to that, and that Red Bull is wearing off. So Ravi, I'm handing it back.
Hey, thanks, Fabian. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Also, you're on holiday. That's a great session, and I'm sure people find it very helpful. Thanks a lot for joining again.
Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your session. I'll try to stay up for a little bit longer. You guys enjoy the rest of your SharePoint Saturday India. Yes, JB, SharePoint Nairobi Airbus. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.